Hi everybody, Happy New Year! So I've gotten a lot of questions about the road trip Eric and I took last summer, so I decided to make a little video to answer them and give you any other advice for taking your own road trip this summer. This video is going to cover how we planned for our trip, our favorite stops, what we ate, how much the trip cost, my camera gear, and anything else I can think of that might be beneficial for you. So, how do you plan for a trip like this? I think the idea to take this road trip all started when we got really into watching van life videos on YouTube. And we loved the idea of being free to travel and see national parks, but we were less excited about the selling all of your possessions and living out of a van aspect. So we decided to take a long extended road trip and see how that went for us. As for how we chose where to go, I am a list person. I have running lists of all the places I'd like to visit someday, and obviously we couldn't go everywhere on this one trip. We had about a month to do it, so we each picked our top 2 or 3 spots that we really wanted to visit and constructed a route around those. I know I wanted to see the Redwoods and Bryce Canyon, and Eric was very excited to go to Yosemite and the Grand Canyon. So we started with those in mind and found campgrounds along the way, so we wouldn't have to drive more than 8 to 10 hours in any given day. It actually worked out really well. Is how we found Craters of the Moon, which we'd never heard of before. It happened to be right between the Tetons and Bend, Oregon, where we were going to stay at an Airbnb. And so with those plugged in into Google Maps, we zoomed into the middle, and that's where Craters of the Moon was, and it was a very happy accident. We chose to travel in September, hoping for fewer crowds in the national parks, and also anticipating good weather. For the most part, the weather was really cooperative outside of some snow on our first day in Colorado, and also some very hot days in Southern California when we went to Death Valley and Joshua Tree, but it's to be expected. As you can imagine, traveling in 2020 came with some complications. In addition to COVID closing down some places, we had to deal with some wildfires in California, which started right before we left for our trip. So we monitored that situation, and our 3-night stay in the Sierra National Forest turned into 1 night at Lake Tahoe, 1 night at Desert Creek, and 1 night at Death Valley. But this is just par for the course for taking a road trip. Things are bound to change. So that's kind of how we planned out our trip. Okay, so how much does a trip like this cost? I can only give you estimates because we didn't track how much we spent, but these are some good ballpark numbers to keep in mind. So for camping, our campgrounds averaged around $24 a night, which comes out to around $280 total. So if you want to bring down the amount spent on camping, you can look into dispersed camping, also known as boondocking, which is the free camping you can do on public land. The dirt has some good resources, but just keep in mind that dispersed camping means usually no running water and no public restrooms, so you kind of have to figure it out for yourself. You can also look into staying with friends and family, which we definitely took advantage of.
Ready with the camera.
See ya! So in addition to camping, we had booked an Airbnb and also decided to stay at hotels because of inclement weather. So that cost us probably around $450. If you plan on visiting more than one national park, I recommend getting a national park pass. They cost around $90, but they're good for the entire year, which will more than pay for itself. Also, we had to pay for gas with all the driving we did. It was between $800 and $1,000. And food, probably around $400, which we definitely saved money by making our own food. So in total, we spent around $2,200 or a little over $1,000 a person, which for us was totally worth it. Speaking of food, I was so excited to make some fancy camping meals, and so I printed out all these recipes, but making food really was the least interesting part of every day. So in the end, we opted for what was fast, easy, and kind of nutritious. For breakfast, we would usually eat pancakes or oatmeal if it were a cold morning, or granola bars if we were staying somewhere hot, and always pour over coffee.
Roadside lunch.
For lunch, we usually had peanut butter sandwiches or a bunch of snacks, and we had an excessive number of snacks, a bunch from Trader Joe's, granola bars, crackers, goldfish, graham crackers, other crackers, dried fruit, trail mix, beef jerky, you name it. For dinner, like I said, printed off a bunch of recipes from Fresh Off the Grid or REI. We made taco skillet a couple times. We had spaghetti, beans and rice, pancetta hash. One night we had an MRE, so very simple stuff. And I'll link a couple of these recipes down in the description so you can try them too. So for camera gear, I knew I wanted to record this epic adventure, and I spent a lot of time researching cameras that would record in 4K video and have really good dynamic range. I landed on the Sony a7 III. I purchased a used model, and it came with a 16-35mm wide-angle lens. So this was the primary camera used on our videos, and I think it did a great job. I'm very happy with it. It was a little heavy, but for the image quality, I'm so happy with it. Secondarily, Erik was my backup cameraman. He shot on a DJI Osmo action camera, which is very similar to a GoPro. I had purchased it to be able to do underwater shots, which didn't really make it into the final cut. But it was fun to experiment with. Our favorite spots. This is so hard to answer because pretty much everywhere we stayed was amazing, but there are a few standouts. So in no particular order, our favorite spots of the entire trip were the Grand Canyon, Death Valley, and Bryce Canyon. The Grand Canyon completely exceeded our expectations. It's not what I anticipated at all, and it's really something you need to see for yourself. Its scale just breaks your brain. Pictures don't do this justice. It was gorgeous, all of the colors in the rock. Also, it was fun to see elk everywhere. I can't wait for us to go back and complete that rim-to-rim hike. We weren't even planning on going to Death Valley, but we got so lucky. In the summer, it can get up to 120 degrees Fahrenheit, but it was only around 80 degrees where we were staying. This national park is also gorgeous with all of these diverse landscapes. The setting of Tatooine, the Salt Flats, which also happen to be the lowest point in North America, and we saw a roadrunner. I would have loved one more full day to explore this park. As for Bryce Canyon, we got to stay there for 3 whole nights, which is the longest we stayed anywhere. We had time to relax and plenty of time to go on all the hikes we wanted. The campground was great. It was so quiet, and a short walk to the rim and all of the trails. views, which I'm obsessed with. They were fun to hike through and see at all angles and at different times of day, and their color gradients are just stunning. So those were our favorites. Again, it was hard to choose, but we liked those spots. If I could leave you with any other advice, it would be to start thinking about your summer road trip now. Most national parks, campgrounds start accepting reservations 6 months in advance, and some of them sell out quickly, so if you're interested, now is the time to start looking. And if you're worried about COVID, they do have cancellation policies. I would look into them. I don't know if they're 100% refund or not. Additionally, get that national park pass. It's good for the entire year. It will pay for itself if you think you'll be visiting more than one national park. And it's also good for regional and local attractions like the waterfall we went to in Bend. We used that pass so we wouldn't have to pay for a day pass. The other advice I have for planning out your route would be to spend more than 1 or 2 nights in each spot. I had really anticipated 2 nights being plenty, but it really started to feel like rushing from spot to spot, and I would have liked more downtime and more of a chance to really explore and enjoy the area we were in. If you can, print directions before you leave. You might not have cell service in some of these places like Death Valley and Joshua Tree. Try to have maps with you, bring an atlas, but just be prepared for not having cell service or Wi-Fi or GPS in some of these places. So that's it. I hope this was helpful and will maybe inspire you to take your own road trip. And if you have any other advice that I forgot to mention, leave it in the comments so we can all help each other out. And finally, if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please consider doing so. It would help me out, and you won't miss any of the travel Eric and I have planned for 2021. So until next time, take care, and thanks for watching.